that, but I just wanted to give some of my own thoughts about that. Because I've read lately a lot of information, not all of it is accurate, and I wanted to make sure people understood a few things about that. This is an 18 mil non-homestead millage. It's not a bond, it's not a sinking fund, or it's not for any particular things. It's for the general fund, and it does not apply to homeowners. It only applies to business properties and second properties. It is a requirement by the state that we levy this 18 mills in order to get our allowance from the state for the students. And the way it works, our state is a little weird how we do our school funding, but we collect this money, we send the money to the state, all of it. And then if we do that, like we're required to do, then the state sends us money back for each student. Currently, I believe the number is $9,608. If we don't do that, they don't send us our full share of the money. They send us, I think currently it's $8,060. So you're talking like $1,500, $1,600 difference if we don't do that. It's like a quid pro quo. We do what we're required to do, and then they send us what they send us what they're required to send us. These kind of millages are never controversial. These are not, I tried to Google last night to see if I could find where another district had turned this down lately. I found one from a couple years ago in Ionia where they turned it down. The school announced that they were going to do layoffs, that they were going to increase class sizes, all the sports were pay to play, the band and art and a bunch of programs were going to be reduced, and then later on that year, so then after all that was going on, they repassed it. But I didn't find any others. There may be others. I didn't look exhaustively, but it's just not something that's normally a big deal. And so, but I'm hearing rumblings and I'm seeing things on social media that people are thinking of turning this down. And so what would happen if we turn this down in February? Well, the one thing would be businesses, all the businesses in our community, big or small, they would pay nothing. There would be no payment towards our schools by any businesses. It's a huge tax break for businesses is what this is. And all of the homeowners would be solely responsible for paying exactly the same. You would not pay 1 cent less by turning this down, homeowners. It would be just the businesses that would get off the hook for this. But what would happen to the schools? Well, the schools would receive way less money. I think the number I heard was $24 million per year less. And so I guess why would we want to do that? Why, are we defunding schools? Are we trying to shift so that businesses don't pay taxes anymore? We only want to have individuals pay taxes? It's hard for me to understand why we would do that. The question has also come up though, well, why do we have to do it in February? Well, why can't we do it later? Why do we? Well, I think the earlier that we get this settled and the earlier that you know that you're receiving your full funds, the more that you can plan. I don't know if any of you out here know what's going on in June of this year, but we have a contract that is coming up. We want to be able to give the best contract that we can afford. I don't know how we're supposed to make promises to our teachers when we don't know if we're getting $24+ million. I don't know how that would help any of you in contract negotiations to have this unsettled. So the other thing is we have a superintendent search. We're looking to hire somebody in April or so. How will it look to candidates coming into this community to see that the community turned down this non-homestead millage that every other community approves as a matter of course? Is that going to show a community that's dedicated to education? Is that going to show a community that a good superintendent is going to come and want to work for? It's not going to. So now it is true that if it gets turned down in February, it can come up again. There are some other times in the year that it can come up. But you're talking all kinds of extra effort, extra money, extra time to try to get a millage passed again. And why? Why would we do that to ourselves? So I will say that I've heard there are people in the community who have concerns about the spending in the district and the priorities. And some think that this would be the opportunity to make a statement. And I don't disparage those people, and I know some of those people, and I think they legitimately have these concerns. But I would tell you that this is not the avenue to do it. Get involved in the budget process when we pass the budget. Come in, make yourself known, we will listen, I will listen, but to handcuff or to cut your district off at the knees like this just to make a statement doesn't make any sense to me. So I guess the final thing I'll say is I think that we as trustees, we're essentially leaders of the district, and we are advocates for the students and the staff. And I don't think we should leave any room for misunderstanding as to how we feel. I think we need to be direct, we need to be explicit, and we need to all tonight go on the record for how we intend to vote on this millage, how we recommend our supporters to vote. I intend to vote yes. I'm not playing games with all of your livelihood out there, and I hope nobody else does either.
Trustee Weaver?
So to the dismay of many at this table, I run my Facebook page, and this topic came up, and appointee Blake is actually feeding a very false narrative. So let's correct some of the information that he put out. So when this came up at our board table, both myself and Mr. Silveri addressed that there was the potential for failure. The conversation was around, because we understand there is potential for failure, how do you lower the risk of that potential? So the question was, February or August. The board decided on February. So, but again, so to act like there wasn't acknowledgement by multiple people at the table that that risk exists. That's just knowing that the risk is out there, because yes, over the last, specifically since 2020, a lot more people have become engaged and have a lot more questions. But we've also learned there's been a lot of those questions going on far before that. So again, that's just take out all the emotion and the grandstanding by appointee Blake and just recognize the truth is, it's just honestly assessing the situation and knowing there is potential risk, and how do you mitigate that risk? That is what leaders do. They pull the emotion out and they address that. So that's where the February-August part came from. Then the February, if it was to fail in February now, since it was picked to go in February and had to go to August, how it would impact the negotiations. That came up in very good conversation. A teacher was very respectful. There was back and forth with multiple people. It was a very good conversation. In the end, the funding for this millage is post-24. It's post-24. So this, that nobody pays taxes and all that stuff. Again, be very clear, that's if it failed at both opportunities. The idea is that if you have risk of failure, if we actually work on those issues, you reduce the risk of failure, and the end goal is to pass the millage. So again, I suggested August because I believed working from November to August would allow us to reduce that risk and have us have a better chance to ensure that we have outcome without having to hold the election twice. Again, Mr. Silveri did say, again, we could have 3 bites of the apple. So again, acknowledge that there was some risk to failure, but we'd have more options. That decision was made. The money for our base, as we know, does not go up in 24 after the millage. It's not an increase. There's no increase to funds. It just says we maintain our millage. We maintain the budget. That would say whoever's sitting down at the table to negotiate the contract is working off our budget. The only way that it would impact it is if there was actually a failure. But that's a completely different subject, because we would be talking about, all, as appointee Blake pointed out, there's all kinds of things we'd have to be looking at from a funding standpoint. So we wouldn't be able to meet our commitments. That, again, is just have that honest conversation of what we're talking about. Everyone at this table, I think, wants the millage passed. There was 2 different approaches of how to go about it and addressing concerns. But to sit up here and try and claim that someone in our community that might possibly vote no because they have genuine concerns about how money is spent and they don't have reassurances that that's going to change, somehow makes them want to defund public school or anti-teacher. It's not any of that. It's not any of that, because most of them get up here and have talked about wanting to reduce central office spending to make sure we return more funds to the classroom. They have advocated for that. That's actually why they are frustrated, because they do not see spending going to the classroom. So again, I'm not going to play Trustee Blake's game here and grandstand and show you all kinds of emotion. I will continue to just say we need to address the facts. I absolutely, again, love the conversations with multiple teachers in our community, outside of the noise and the nastiness that can happen on social media. It is good avenues. I think our community is moving in the right direction. I'm very confident that good things will happen. But again, we just got to start dealing with facts and get all the emotion out of the room.
Are you voting yes or no?
I didn't hear an answer, yes or no. Are you voting for it? Are you recommending your supporters to vote for it or not?